You ever had someone so petty, so controlling, that they thought they could literally unplug you from the world? Because that's exactly what my HOA president, Patricia, who I now only call Karen, decided to do. I was working from home, minding my own business, when suddenly my Wi-Fi went out. Not just a hiccup, not just a storm. No, this was deliberate. And how did I know? Because I caught her. I stormed outside, laptop still in hand. And there she was, kneeling next to the shared utility box with a smug grin like she'd just conquered Mount Everest. Internet access is a privilege, not a right, she said. Can you believe that? Who even says stuff like that? I swear, the arrogance dripped off every word. I told her flat out she had no authority to touch my connection, but she wagged her finger and reminded me about some nonsense community bandwidth rule she'd cooked up. Apparently my evening video calls with clients were disturbing the neighborhood. Harmony. Translation. She just didn't like me. Now I could have called the provider. I could have even called the cops. But Karen had been pulling stunts like this for months, writing fake violations, measuring my lawn with a ruler, even leaving notes about my unapproved welcome mat. Enough was enough. If she wanted to play dirty, I was going to play dirtier. And here's where the idea struck. Karen hated anything unruly, anything that shattered her picture-perfect vision of a cookie-cutter suburb. So what's the opposite of perfect, clean, and controlled? Haunted, creepy, chaotic, the kind of thing that makes your skin crawl at night. I decided then and there, if she wanted to cut my lifeline to the digital world, I'd cut her peace of mind in return. I was going to transform her pristine little yard into something straight out of a nightmare. Not just a prank, but a full-blown haunted graveyard experience that she couldn't escape. I started sketching out the plan in my notebook. Fake tombstones, eerie sound effects, motion sensors that triggered screams in the middle of the night, fog machines that would roll mist across her perfect lawn. Oh, and animatronics, the kind that snap to life when you least expect it. If Karen thought she was the queen of this neighborhood, she was about to learn what it felt like to live in a kingdom of shadows. Because when you take away a man's Wi-Fi, you don't just mess with his convenience, you mess with his soul. And mine was ready for war. I spent the next week turning imagination into invasion. First rule, make it believable. If Karen thought this was some garden variety prank, she'd dismiss it in minutes. So I scouted thrift stores, haunted attraction suppliers, and the seasonal aisle at the big box store. I bought cracked tombstones, ratty cloaks, black netting, and realistic skulls. I bartered for a fog machine with a guy who ran haunted props. He gave me a knowing nod. Apparently, suburban vendettas are seasonal. Next, timing. Karen slept with a window cracked and a tea kettle on at dusk. She did her rounds at twilight, polishing the mailbox and glaring at anything slightly askew. That meant the reveal had to hit at the witching hour when shadows stretch and imaginations run wild. I set the system for dusk, tied to motion sensors that would wake the yard the moment she or any neighbor stepped across the threshold. I recruited help. A few neighbors, quietly fed up with Karen, volunteered. Some for laughs, others for the justice of it. Marco from 3 houses down, with a voice like a radio announcer, volunteered to be the ghost. He practiced moans in his garage until his wife threatened to call an exorcist. Jenna, the florist, shaped wreaths that looked unnervingly fresh on decayed graves. Even Mr. Patel lent a battered lantern he swore once belonged to someone important. Installation was a dance of stealth and precision. After the sun dipped low, we moved with flashlights covered in red film and gloves on. We dug shallow pits for tombstones, so they sat just proud of the grass, layered black netting to camouflage supports, and wired motion triggers to speakers hidden in the shrubs. Marco tested the animatronic. Hand we'd wired to spring from behind a toppled angel when someone brushed past. It worked perfectly, an unnatural scratch and a muffled groan. But practical jokes only work with a narrative, so we wrote the backstory. The Wilkins family, dispossessed Victorian gardeners, cursed by a jealous neighbor. We printed sepia-toned historical notices and stapled them to Karen's mailbox. To the casual eye, it read like neighborhood lore, but to Karen, who collected rules, like trophies, it would look ominous and sanctioned by history. The night before the launch, I lay awake planning contingencies. What if she called the HOA? What if she tried to reclaim her yard with authority? We had legal pads with disclaimers and staged neighbor testimonies to diffuse complaints. This wasn't vandalism. It was theater. It was payback, dressed in costume. My heart hammered with a mix of adrenaline and guilt. This was petty but satisfying, in a way that felt righteous. I promised myself we'd stop at scare, not harm, and rehearsed every step in my head. The first night of the haunting, I barely breathed. My phone buzzed with texts from neighbors hiding behind curtains, waiting for the show to begin. The fog machine kicked on right at dusk, curling pale mist across Karen's manicured flower beds. It didn't take long. Karen, in her pastel cardigan and with clipboard in hand, marched onto her lawn like a general surveying her battlefield. She froze mid-step when her foot triggered the first motion sensor. A low, guttural moan echoed from the shrubs. Karen's head snapped around. Her eyes widened, and for the first time since I'd known her, she didn't look smug. She looked spooked. The fog thickened, and then the animatronic hand clawed upward from the soil with a sharp, jerking motion. Karen shrieked so loudly that lights flicked on down the street. "Not funny," she yelled into the night, but her voice cracked, betraying her nerves. That was only round one. She stormed forward, determined to rip down whatever nonsense she thought I'd set up. But when she passed the toppled angel statue, Marco's pre-recorded voice kicked in. "Leave this place. You are cursed." The sound was deep, resonant, and perfectly timed. Karen dropped her clipboard. She stumbled backward into a wreath of black roses Jenna had crafted, and the branches snapped like brittle bones. The neighborhood group chat exploded with laughing emojis. People were actually live commenting as though it was a reality show. One message read, "Finally, Karen gets a taste of her own rules." But I didn't stop there. The pièce de résistance was a tall shadow figure, I'd rigged with black fabric and glowing red eyes. It swayed slowly on a hidden pulley system, making it seem like it floated just above the ground. As Karen spun around, she locked eyes on it. For a moment, her jaw just hung open. Then she bolted toward her door like she'd seen the devil himself. And here's the beauty of it. The final motion sensor was hidden beneath her porch steps. As she scrambled up, a piercing scream blared from the speakers, followed by a chorus of whispering voices. Karen tripped, nearly face-planting into her own welcome mat, before slamming the door shut behind her. The neighborhood roared with laughter from behind blinds and cracked windows. For once, no one was afraid of her. She was afraid of something bigger. And it was just the beginning. The haunted graveyard wasn't a one-night scare. It was a campaign. Because I wasn't just after revenge, I was after change. Karen needed to feel what it was like to be powerless. And I was going to make sure she felt it every single night. Morning after morning, Karen peered through blinds like a character awaiting a verdict. The haunted yard became the neighborhood's nightly ritual. People gathered at dusk, phones ready, whispers of "Remember Wilkins" passing like ghost stories. It didn't take long for the HOA to notice. Complaints arrived, but not the kind Karen expected. Instead of outraged neighbors pointing fingers at me, they sent messages about community morale and how neighborhood theater had oddly brought people together. Karen, however, was not laughing. She filed a formal complaint with the board, brandishing photos and data she claimed proved malicious intent. I prepared my defense, neighbor testimonials, receipts for props, and a letter explaining it as a community theater project meant to deter theft and encourage unity. The board, aware many residents were quietly supportive, opted for a mediated hearing instead of an immediate fine. At the hearing, the truth unfolded like a slow curtain. Neighbors admitted they helped install props because they were tired of Karen's petty power plays. Marco gave a testimony about community spirit and how the yard had become a catalyst for connection. Jenna presented black roses as dramatic evidence. Even Mr. Patel spoke about long evenings spent fixing speakers to bring neighbors together. The board members shifted. They had expected nastiness, but found a neighborhood ready to reconcile. Karen, meanwhile, was unmasked, not by props, but by the way people spoke of her. For years, she'd ruled by intimidation, and now the mask slipped in front of faces she'd alienated. She tried to wield the rulebook like a sword, but rules mean little without goodwill. The board issued a compromise. We would remove permanent props within a week, keep theatrical elements for one final community haunted night charity event, and enroll Karen in a neighborhood mediation program. Did the apology change her? Not completely. Her voice remained sharp, but there was a softness in the way she listened. Awkward. Unfamiliar. The haunted yard became, paradoxically, a bridge. Neighbors started regular potlucks. People who once avoided one another shared tools and recipes. Laughter replaced terse notes on doors. As for me, I reinstated my Wi-Fi the next morning. The internet hummed back, but something else had rebooted too. The neighborhood. Slightly less rigid and a little more alive. We had used theatrics to expose toxicity and rebuild community the hard way. Maybe it was petty, maybe it was theatrical, but it worked. Months later, kids still dared each other to whisper the Wilkins story at sleepovers, but the dare had lost its sting. Now it came with cookies and board games. Karen learned limits. I learned patience. The yard returned to quieter normal. Every Halloween, someone leaves a black rose on her porch, A reminder that community is messy. If you enjoyed watching Karen finally get what she deserved, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, smash the like, and drop a comment with your favorite part of the story. Your support keeps these wild HOA tales coming.